After a few weeks with the ROG Ally, I'm sitting in a weird spot with this device. For the most part, it is a remarkably powerful gaming device that definitely packs potential. But for someone like me who already has a powerful gaming PC, a Nintendo Switch, a PS5 and an Xbox Series X, this piece of tech kinda feels like it doesn't have a place in my life. If you're comparing apples with apples, the ROG Ally is the better Steam Deck. Its performance is better, its display is brighter, and I actually prefer the design over Valve's Handheld. It also runs Windows 11, which opens up a lot of freedom to do all sorts of cool things. Emulating PS3 games comes to mind. Emulating Switch games also comes to mind. You didn't hear that, Nintendo. You can also install the Battle.net and Epic Games launcher. There's really no software limit to what you can do on the ROG Ally. At the same time, Windows 11 does bring its good old Microsoft flair with it too. This is both good and bad. The OS demands more battery life, and all the we built Windows 11 for the touchscreens, but it doesn't actually work with touchscreens comes with it too. Thankfully, ASUS has integrated the ROG Ally specific armory crate into the system too, so you can get a cool overlay with some easy to master settings. These help increase the brightness and reduce the resolution of the display, and a few other things. The debate whether or not SteamOS beats Windows 11 will go on forever at this rate. You miss out on a lot of features with SteamOS, and Windows 11 of course brings its Game Pass library to the table too. This makes the ROG Ally a pretty game-packed device, but SteamOS also comes with its own simplistic UI and its accessibility. Before I get into the technical and design aspects, I need to discuss what you get in the ROG Ally box, which is basically nothing. In the box, I got the unit itself, a USB charger rated at 65 watts, some pointless manuals and a cardboard dock. No jokes here, with all the money you spend on this device, ASUS has included a flimsy and cheap piece of cardboard you can use to mount the unit up. ASUS does have some other accessories available for the unit, including a branded travel case and an ROG HDMI charging dock that lets you charge the Ally and output an HDMI signal from the dock to a TV so you can turn the unit into a Switch-like device. Of course, you don't get any of these units with the device, just this horrible cardboard mount. On paper, the ROG Ally is a powerful handheld. Its 1080p display runs at 120Hz, and the AMD Z1 Extreme chipset means you can basically play anything out there by either tweaking the graphics settings or reducing the 1080p display to 720p. The device is covered in a white plastic shell. Anyone that has used a Switch or a Steam Deck in the past will feel how familiar this thing is to hold. But I have to say it is a lot more comfortable to use than my Nintendo Switch. My thumbs often cramp after an hour with the Switch, and I found that on the ROG Ally that wasn't the case. It comes in at 28cm long, 11cm high, and is 2.1cm thick. It also weighs 608 grams. To compare, the Nintendo Switch OLED is 24cm long, 10cm high, and 2.8cm thick. It also only weighs 420 grams. So the ROG Ally is bigger and heavier, but you won't notice any substantial difference here if you use both devices. The display on the ROG Ally is 7 inches large with an aspect ratio of 16:9. It is an IPS screen and fairly bright considering the display type. The panel also supports HDR, Dolby Vision and AMD FreeSync Premium, which is great for a portable device too. It is surrounded by a black bezel, and for the most part the display takes up a decent amount of the surface. It looks like the centerpiece on the unit, as it should. The rest of the unit is covered in all sorts of buttons and knobs. It isn't as cluttered as the Steam Deck, which for me was a plus. Instead of adding the touchpads and keeping both analog sticks at the top, ASUS has excluded the touchpad and moved the right stick down. This replicates an Xbox controller, which makes sense given the Windows focus here. It also includes a D-pad and the familiar buttons you'll find if you have ever used an Xbox controller. The only ROG exclusive buttons here are the Armory Crate and Command Center buttons. They launch designated apps on the unit, which I'll get into in a bit. There's also the trigger buttons, which include both an LT and RT set and 2 extra paddles at the back, which are assigned to whatever you want. When it comes to the RGB, the ROG Ally features RGB on both analog sticks and it looks pretty awesome. The lighting effects can be tweaked in the app and the color profiles are endless. I especially enjoyed how the RGB contrasted against the white plastic, even though I absolutely hated that the device was white in the first place. At the back, ASUS has been creative with its fan holes by etching the ROG logo into the plastic to help with cooling. There's also a strange piece of metal dividing up the two halves at the back. It would have been nice to have an RGB strip here instead. There's also a rumble feature on the Ally which I don't see people talking about. I love vibration in games and I always crank it up to the max. There are 2 very strong motors here, one on each side. Then there are some important ports to mention too. The 3.5mm audio jack combo, micro SD card slot and the large ASUS XG mobile port are found at the top. The USB-C port where the charging takes place is found inside the XG Mobile port too. For those who don't know, the XG Mobile port lets you attach an external GPU to the ROG Ally like an RTX 4090. In turn, it would amplify the experience beyond the internal Z1 Extreme chip. Out of everything the ROG Ally offers, I'm super interested to see how this XG Mobile unit would work combined with docking this to a TV. There's a lot of potential here. In theory, you can have an RTX 40-like console next to your TV which doubles up as a portable gaming handheld too, like a modern day Switch on crack. Pair 4 wireless controllers to this unit and you have yourself a killer party gaming setup, but ASUS didn't send any of these cool things to test out yet, so hopefully we'll get to that in the future. On the negative side of things, the ROG Ally has a number of complaints. First off, why white? I get that making a black Ally would just make the device look like a Steam Deck, but this white device is going to get filthy. The only white tech I own is my Switch OLED Joy-Cons, and those are often embarrassingly dirty. Not that I'm a dirty person, but it is white, so you see every mark and streak of grease. Secondly, the shoulder buttons on the ROG Ally are also not great. They have been designed way too close together, with virtually no gap between the two. This means they get cumbersome to press. There are also only 2 triggers here instead of the 4 which you'll find on the Steam Deck. I personally would never use more than 2, so it works for me, but I'm sure there's gamers out there that would have loved to have extra 2 paddles. Apart from that, the ROG Ally does feel great to use. The buttons are responsive and have decent clicks to them. The analog sticks feel firm with no wobble, and the touchscreen is responsive. I enjoyed the general size of the ROG Ally more than my Switch, and it was more comfortable to play for longer periods of time.
Thing you're gonna see on Pandora. But seriously, thanks for answering my call. We might not have the numbers, but with a badass like you, we've got a fighting chance. Ready for the Crimson Road.
So now onto the meat and juice of this review. How does the performance perform on this ROG Ally? By the end of the year, you'll be able to pick up 2 different versions of the Ally, but this is the launch version and it includes the following specs. To say that the AMD Z1 Extreme chip is a triumph in portable gaming is an understatement. This chip is incredibly powerful. I haven't ever used the Steam Deck before, but every test I ran, I looked around for the equivalent online and I was impressed to see the benchmarks. Across every spectrum, the ASUS ROG Ally no doubt beats the Steam Deck. It also benefits from the ability to consume more power to deliver more performance. So keeping the unit plugged in while gaming would result in better performance across the board.
Attaboy.
I'm also going to just say that you'll want to keep this unit plugged in if you can, because firstly, the battery life is just a horror story, and secondly, it performs much better. Sure, portable gaming is totally viable, but the hour or so I got didn't make it as untethered as I was hoping. I would also enjoy the 20 to 30% performance boost more, so sitting next to a plug point was totally worth it. Whoever said this device is a saving grace for load shedding is lying. The ROG Ally 720p features also saving grace at times thanks to the weak battery draw and the games demanding more power. Even at 720p, the games look pretty darn impressive on this unit. The PPI on the display isn't anything remarkable, but if you're used to playing Switch games, this is going to blow you away. So I ran some tests across a number of games. I tested out newer titles while also downloading some older games which I simply couldn't wait to play again. Here are some of the results I got. The ROG has a fan which you'll definitely hear. It is hard to ignore. While the device doesn't get very hot, the fan is generally always on, but it never reached more than 20 decibels, making it a pleasant hum. This was at the max temperature reading I got at 58 degrees Celsius. A big push for me to use the ROG Ally in the end was how well it ran older games. Games which I have had on my Steam account for years and I just didn't get around to playing. I found myself playing games like Sonic Generation and Final Fantasy 13 and a few other classics. Not only because I have longed to play these games, but they also ran so much better than the latest AAA titles. Of course, that leads me to my next point. If you already have a PC, PS5, Xbox or Switch, is this a must-have? I don't really think so. Personally, if I want to play a game, I already have better platforms to play it on. My PC is more powerful, my PS5 has all those cool exclusives, and my Xbox, well, has been sitting on the shelf gathering dust for the last few months. I also have my Switch for those magical Nintendo portable games. Where I do think ASUS has the opportunity to grab the market is new PC adopters, people who don't own a PC and don't have the cash to build one. For 16,000 Rand, this is a fantastic option. Slap on a Game Pass subscription and a Steam summer sale session and you have yourself a pretty great platform. Sure, there are some shortcomings such as the horrible battery life and some technical bugs, but it is as close to a gaming PC as you'll get for this price tag. I also worry about the future of the ASUS ROG Ally. How much support is ASUS going to give this device? We know the company releases hardware every few months, so is investing in this handheld a bad idea if a new version will come around this time next year? It isn't a Switch where you know it will be a long-term investment. PC brands are out there to make as much money as possible, and that means refreshing hardware even if it doesn't really need a refresh. So those are my thoughts on the ASUS ROG Ally. Are you looking at picking this device up? Let me know in the comments down below. Also shout out if you have any questions. Once again, thanks for watching and please do consider liking and subscribing. Be sure to visit www.glitch.online for more gaming tech news and reviews. Until next time, farewell.